I'm not paying Google $100,000 a week or a month. I'm gonna do any of that shit. We're gonna go brand name recognition route.
How?
By putting a camera on my fucking desk and start talking.
Social media. Is there a grail that you're chasing?
I don't chase anything. For the most part, I can get anything I want.
I still have it. And I actually, and you probably get this a lot, where like dudes get emotional about the watches they buy from you. I actually wore it during the birth of my first son.
That's amazing.
Welcome back to Rise, Life Stories of Accomplished Individuals. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing in these experiences with me. As you know, Rise is all about extracting value from my guests. Today we have Roman Sharf with us. Roman, what's up, man?
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. So this was just like such a last minute serendipitous thing. We were just talking about it off camera. I was at a Starbucks in Aventura, which I live on the other side of town, so I'm never up there, but I was there for a meeting, and the guy I was waiting for, he was late by 2 hours. I'm like, okay, I gotta get a coffee. And I go get a coffee, and the other gentleman I was with, he's like nudging me, he's like, holy shit, that's Roman Sharf. Wow. And I was like, I didn't even look in your direction yet. I'm like, what are you talking about? There's no way Roman Sharf is over here. He goes, dude, look. And I look over, and it's Roman Sharf.
Oddly enough, my situation with you was exactly the same, because the night before, we're in Aventura at Reunion Kitchen having dinner, me, my wife, and the girls, and my wife pulled out her reader glasses because we're getting old, and she was reading the menu. She happened to have left them there. Mm-hmm. We're en route to Marcus's store, which is where we are now. Yep. And she goes, oh my God, we stopped by there and I happened to see a Starbucks, and the girls went, Daddy, can you get a Starbucks? And I walked in by chance to get Starbucks at that location. I normally would do it in Sunny Isles next to my place.
And I accosted you. I just came up to you. I was like, Roman, what's up?
I'm actually very cool with that.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Like I love, like, if people watch what I do out in social media and they want to approach me, I tell them, do approach me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean? It feeds into my narcissistic personality, don't get me wrong. But at the same token, I always tell people, like, I'm just a regular guy. You know what I mean?
Sure.
If you want to come say hello, please do. I love that.
Yeah, well, okay. So when you say you're a regular guy, when I met you the first time 20 years ago, you weren't a regular guy. You still are, but you were at the top of your game. I mean, like I said, you still are, but what happened, I'm just gonna tell the story quick. I'm gonna get into your accolades because I prepared some stuff that I found, but before we get into that, about 20 years ago, when I was 30 years old, now I'm 50, you're a couple of years younger than me.
I'm 48.
I know, 1975.
That's it.
Doing my research. I wanted to buy my second nice watch. I had a Rolex Submariner, which I actually got on trade. I built somebody a website in exchange for a Submariner.
Nice.
Believe it or not. Actually, 2 Submariners because I had a partner. And my next watch, I wanted an AP, a Royal Oak Offshore. And I went online, and back then there was no social media, there was nothing, but there was Luxury Bazar. And there still is Luxury Bazar.
There still is.
So to me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy this watch. I think at the time it was going to be $17,000. A lot of money back then, a lot of money now. And it was, I was a little nervous about it. I was living in Toronto, and I said, okay, like, I don't know who this is. I don't know anything about, nothing. It's not, again, we didn't have Instagram, so it's not like I can go on Instagram, like, all right, this guy's legit. He's got X amount of followers, this and that engagement. And I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna fly to Philly to buy this watch. So I called you up, and you're like, come on over. And I came to your store, and I saw, like, it's legit. You had like a safe I could walk into.
Yes.
So when I saw the safe I could walk into, and I saw what looked to me like tens of millions of dollars worth of watches.
It wasn't quite that much back then, but we had a little bit.
To me, it felt like tens of millions of dollars, right? And I knew everything was legit, and I bought the watch, and I still have it. And I actually, and you probably get this a lot, where like dudes get emotional about the watches they buy from you. I actually wore it during the birth of my first son.
That's amazing.
It is.
That's definitely an amazing story. And you know what? E-commerce back then, you just mentioned e-commerce, it was in its infant stages. And the biggest issue I had back then was convincing somebody that I'm not a fraud, because nobody believed in that stuff. Part of the reason now everybody's online. Back then, it was a handful of guys online, right? So back then, you spend a lot of time, 90% of the time was spent convincing guys, like, hey, I'm a okay guy. I'm not going to fraud you. I'm not going to take your money and run. Like, here I am, And today, you have FaceTime. It's the easiest thing, and with the help of social media and exposure, and obviously years in the business, it's a lot easier. But back then, that was the issue I faced with pretty much every single client.
Well, but if you, think about it, it's legit. legit, right? Like you couldn't have faulted these guys for thinking
Of course,
that way.
absolutely. And I even had a technique, if you will, as to how to convince someone that I'm not going to send them a brick in a box if they send me a wire check or whatever it might
I
be.
want to hear all about it, but I want to hear it in due time.
All right,
I want to hear it in due time. So what I want to do is I've prepared something. I've done some research, and I want to read through it. It's a bit lengthy, so you're gonna have to bear with me on this one. Give me a sec. All right. So, Roman Sharf arguably has the most knowledge on luxury. Roman Sharf arguably has the most knowledge on luxury watches of any person on earth. He is the founder, owner, and operator, as well as CEO of Luxury Bazar, a leading destination for luxurious high-end watches and jewelry. Starting with a mere $65,000 of his own money, Roman has grown Luxury Bazar to 40 full-time employees, generating over $150 million per year from a 20,000 square foot facility. I have a feeling that number's a little dated. I think it's higher than that.
Where we are.
Yeah, that's where you are? Okay. Roman and Luxury Bazar have a combined audience count across YouTube and Instagram of approximately 650,000 people and a total of just under 300 million video views on YouTube alone. To understand who Roman Sharf is, we must first understand what is known as the gray market for watches, of which Roman is the leading authority. To comprehend the scale of the gray market for watches, global annual revenues of the entire industry are estimated to be in the billions of dollars. The following definition has been taken from luxurybazar.com. A gray market dealer is a retail operation, whether online or brick and mortar, that sells goods outside of the official distribution network. Therefore, a gray market watch dealer is a business that buys timepieces from sources other than the watch brand manufacturer, and sells them via its own retail operation that is not controlled by the watch brand. Gray market dealers are entirely legal entities. This is all important. I wanted to go through this because
I hear you.
unlike, I think, the people who watch your content, the people who watch mine, they don't know about this whole industry, right? So they're kind of sleeping on it. So I really want to provide this education. Gray market dealers are entirely legal entities that play a significant role in the watch industry. However, because they don't belong to the official authorized network, they are often unfairly judged as being less than authorized dealers, when in fact the opposite is true in many cases. Compared to authorized dealers, gray market dealers are not only generally leaner, more flexible, and more innovative, but they are also guided by market prices rather than the manufacturer's suggested retail price. As an aside, I want to add that I feel that gray market dealers, especially you, who've been in this game for so long, your knowledge of watches is, like 10x, if not more, than the ADs that I've talked to in the past. Born in the Soviet Union in 1975, Roman and his family entered the United States as refugees, settling in a small 450 square foot Brooklyn apartment. After completing high school, Roman joined the U.S. military, served for 3 years, then attended Penn State. By the time he was 26, he was a VP at Deutsche Bank. I was really surprised when I heard that, because that I didn't know about you.
Yeah, I was a corporate cat for a little bit.
Yeah, which you're completely the opposite of now. Roman took a leap of faith, eventually leaving his lucrative corporate career to pursue his love for watches and business, hence the birth of Luxury Bazar.
Okay, podcast over. Looks like you told the whole story.
That's it.
That was fairly accurate.
That is to kind of establish who you are for the people who are watching this who don't know who you are. And I think it's like, to me, whenever I hear your name in the watch community, and I'm a collector. I'm definitely not in the industry like you are, but I'm a collector. And anytime somebody hears your name, it's like you're kind of known as the godfather of this. And a lot of it might have to do with your age. You're just older than a lot of these young guys who are coming in.
That is true. And it's also, I think it mostly has to do with the fact that the gray market online business, gray market business has been around prior to the internet, prior to e-commerce, right? It first started on eBay for the first couple of years, and then gradually moved into commerce as e-commerce became accessible and popular and actually became built as the technology finally caught up, because eBay was it.
Yeah.
Right. And because it was me and probably less than a dozen guys that did this on eBay initially, some of them have retired, some of them are no longer in business, and I stuck around from the beginning till now. And I don't like to be called the godfather of anything. I don't feel that's a proper terminology.
That's fair.
I'd like to be called a guy that came into the game in the very beginning when it started, one of the guys that started the game, and one of the guys that's still in the game.
And you had to identify this opportunity, because I'm going to get to it, because I want to go back to kind of your early life, but you must have identified the opportunity being a watch lover at the time, that there is this potential massive scale in a resale market?
I took a safer approach, if you will. My first child was born in whose store we're at right now.
Yes.
And, the salary that I was receiving from Deutsche Bank was extremely lucrative.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing two things at the same time. I had a very demanding job, a job that had me up all kinds of hours in the morning. I ran a team that was in Singapore, which was 12 hours ahead of me. Mm-hmm. And, I also took care of their global local payment system on the infrastructure side. We're talking about $42 billion a month in transactions.
Yeah.
You can imagine how much interest that earns overnight. So it was a very demanding job. And it was also at the time where you're a technology guy, where we're going away from client service technology to web technologies. And
right.
when you get into this new revolutionary technology, i.e. the World Wide Web, things tend to break and not work very properly. So it was very demanding. It required me to drive to work 2 hours each way. That's 4 hours out of my day. There was no such thing as 8-hour days. And on top of that, I was doing the watches on the side. And when I got to a point where I felt like the income from the watches was already supplementing more than enough my salary, that I could feed my family, pay for my mortgage and everything else.
How old were you at the time where you switched over?
28 years old.
You had kids young.
Right. So, fairly young. So with that said, I said to myself, you know what? I'm ready to do this full time. Mm-hmm. The market also shifted. A lot of people got let go. I saw Deutsche Bank let go 15% of their company when the market was down. And I'm like, I can bust my ass and I can become a managing director and make a couple of $1 million total comp, and then a business decision can make me lose my job.
Yeah.
I'd rather go my own route.
Yeah, that's fair. So let's go back. Let's go back to the former Soviet Union.
Oh, wow. That was a lot of fun.
So I was actually surprised to learn you came over when you were, what, 16?
13.
13. So you remember.
I remember very well.
Where were you born?
I was born in Odessa.
In Odessa?
Yes.
I was born in Kiev.
Oh, there you go.
Not too far. Neighbors, yeah. So, born in Odessa, you grew up there. And again, if it's too personal, feel free not to say anything. I'm guessing you're Jewish.
Yes.
Okay, as am I.
Yes.
Okay.
No, you don't say.
Right. But, from my recollection, from what my parents told me, is that growing up in post-Soviet Union, growing up in Soviet Union post-World War II, which you're far after World War II, but there was a lot of anti-Semitism. And, in talking to my parents about it and talking about the way...
How old were you when you came over? Or were you born
3.
Here? Oh, you were 3, so you don't remember anything.
I don't remember anything.
You didn't get to experience what I got to experience.
That's why I'm kind of leaning into this, because to me, it's just interesting because, like I said, I left when I was 2, so I have no memory of it. So all I have is what my parents told me coming up, right? I'm growing up, my parents told me this is what happened. And as a kid, I was like, nah, you're lunatics. There's no way, because I grew up in a place that just wasn't anti-Semitic at all. But I'm assuming, you do have those memories. And
I have plenty of those memories. And to the tune of, consider growing up as an African-American in this country, let's say in the 20s, 30s, 40s, right? Where this was not a cool place to be.
No.
If your skin color was different, mm-hmm. right? Today, we're in a different world. Everybody's the same. Everybody's human. We still experience racism, anti-Semitism in small pockets. This is never going to go away because you still have some ignorant people out there. But in Soviet Union, it was the norm, right? The difference is I couldn't be given away by the color of my skin. I could only be given away by my last name, right? And to the tune where you were always last to finish in class. You could be the smartest kid in class, but you would never get the grades. You would be picked on in class just by the teacher because of your religion, right? There are certain things you couldn't say. There are certain things you couldn't do. The worst experience as a child that I have as a memory, I was 9 years old. I was in 3rd grade, I believe, right? Yeah, 3rd grade. And my English teacher at the time was Jewish. I was also the class clown. I was always talking. I was always interrupting. I was always the fun guy. I was always cracking jokes. And I remember vividly my teacher pulling me out of the classroom saying, I want to talk to you in the middle of class. As I cracked another joke or said something else that was funny or not funny, whatever it was. She pulls me out in the hallway, and her words exact to me verbatim, and I'm going to translate it, were, you do understand you can't be doing what you're doing. Our people cannot do what we do, right? And I was 9 years old.
She was talking about your outgoing nature. You couldn't be so visible.
Yes, that's right. She's like, our people literally said that. Our people cannot be that visible. We cannot be that outspoken. You should be a little bit more low-key. based on your religion. This is literally what my third grade teacher told me.
But she's Jewish herself, so it's not like
that. Is this a clean podcast, by the way, or can we curse here?
do whatever you want.
Okay, so that fucks a kid up at 9 years old.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I'm 48. I still remember that conversation vividly. I remember her face. I remember her expression. I remember all those things. Getting beat up because of your religion. A lot of things that made you stronger, if you will. But because it was the norm to me growing up, because I was told this as a child. I knew that it existed. And I knew it was one of those things where, listen, there's not much I can do about it. It is what it is. I just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So that's what that was.
That's crazy. I mean, I mean, obviously you grew up and this is something that was happening on a regular basis. So like, and do you have siblings?
Yeah. Well, I had an older sister who unfortunately passed away, and I have a half sister who is here in America.
Okay. So, I mean, growing up and, during a time, so I mean, we covered the anti-Semitism, part of it, but in terms of like the whole communist part of it and the whole like anti-capitalist part of it, you've obviously become the polar opposite of where you started your life. So you're very much a capitalist, right? And how was that like when you came to America for the first time? You're 13 years old. You head into Brooklyn. You got your small apartment, and your family's starting out. We have a similar story, so I feel you on that. Like the same thing happened. My parents came. I didn't have the memory of it like you do, but my parents were cleaning toilets. Whatever. They didn't speak English. Same, right?
It's the same. It's the same MO when you come here as an immigrant.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's only one difference.
What's that?
Because having heard stories and having wild imagination as a child, you're coming over to the land of opportunity. So the minute that you land, you're realizing that you're now in a place that regardless of your last name, regardless of what it is, you have an opportunity and sky is the limit.
Yeah.
That's the mentality I came over with. And that's a great mentality to have where all of a sudden your wings that were clipped or tied in your back are now fully open and you're able to fly as high as you possibly can.
And did you actually feel that? So when you got here to the United States?
When I got here, in less than 30 days, I met another kid who just came over on the boat, as they said, still had sand in his shoes, right?
Yeah.
And he goes to me, New York City, you can take an aluminum can, you can give it to a location, they'll give you 5 cents for every one of them. So me and him went and collected like 100 cans, right? That's $5.
Yeah.
Back in 1988, it's not today, but that's a slice of pizza, that's a soda, that's a pack of gum, that's all kinds of stuff, right? I did that, and I was less than 1 month in the country. And I'm just like, well, this was easy, right? And then to fast forward, my father gets a good job offer at, in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And one of the things my dad did, and again, when we came over, my dad literally had $4 in his pocket,
sure,
right? And this is after spending 3 weeks in Austria, spending 2 months in Italy, the whole migration thing. And the organization that sponsored us, they help you financially for 6 months. They give you a monthly payment for 6 months, and after that, you go on welfare. My father said that I will work 6 jobs if I have to. I will not go on welfare. I will not take food stamps. I will not do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And he didn't. Then he gets a decent job offer, somewhat in his realm. My dad is an engineer. He got a job as a mechanic maintaining machines at a factory, right? Mm-hmm. That was in Philadelphia. At the time, we were in our apartment in Brooklyn. The rent was $500 for 450 square feet. We're going back 35 years.
Yeah.
Right? That same apartment today is probably $2,000, but it was a lot of money.
Sure.
When minimum wage was $3.15 an hour at the time, right?
Yeah.
We get to Philadelphia for $450 a month. My dad rents a 1,600 square foot 3-bedroom apartment. I walked in, it had a walk-in closet. I'm like, whose room is that? That was my reaction, right? And it was like night and day from Brooklyn to Philadelphia. And when we got to Philadelphia, I got a job delivering newspapers.
Yeah.
That was my first job. It paid me nothing really, but that was money I actually gave back to my dad to help support the family. And I did that up until I took my paycheck and I gave it to the family fund, quote unquote, up until I was probably 16 years old.
So hold on a second. So I'd like to understand kind of where the work ethic came from. So, again, you're new to the country. Your dad got this job. What's making you go out and hustle like this? Like, what's making you go out and do the newspaper route and then take the money, give it back to your folks? Like, what's making you do that? Well, you're a kid. Like,
So I'll explain.
You're like, what, 15 at the time?
No, at the time I was 14.
14.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I came to America in December and I turned 14 in May. when I came here, it was the mental state, right? So I came to this country, and my mental state was, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to be when I grow up. All I know is that whatever it is I do when I grow up, I'm going to be financially successful. That was literally my mentality. And it wasn't about the money. It was about the sacrifice that my dad made coming over here for us to have a better life. Because your parents told you the same thing. We came here for you to have a better life.
Yeah.
You know, not every Russian immigrant coming over from this former Soviet Union, the one thing you hear out of their mouths if they come over with kids is, we know that maybe this may not be the biggest opportunity for us, but I know that my kids are going to have the opportunity. So for me, it was a question of, I am not going to waste this opportunity. No matter what it is I do, I'm going to be successful. That was it. That was the only motivator for me the day that I landed in this country.
What kind of student were you?
I was one of the smartest kids in class, but I was also the biggest smartass. So I got kicked out of 5 high schools, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was not, my grades were always straight A's. My behavior was F's. And that's like, it was my big mouth that got me in trouble for the most part.
All right, that's fair. Okay, so I have a question. You know, you had this hustle mentality. You still have this hustle mentality. You got it as a, you know, I guess feeling this obligation because of the sacrifice that your dad made, your mom and dad made, you know, to bring you over. And I get that. To the people listening to this, the young people, that they don't have that, you know, they don't have that situation. They don't have that difficult situation. I'm a big believer that the more difficult someone's situation is early in life, the more successful they become later.
Not necessarily.
I see it a lot.
You see, what you often see is, it's a two-way street, right? Those that live the hard knocks life, they're motivated to do better. Or those that live the hard knocks life, they get discouraged and they don't do shit.
Yeah.
It's a 50-50 split, at least in my experience, right? And the advice I would give to somebody, it's not an advice, it's a simple fact.
Yeah.
You are living in the best country in the world with the biggest amount of opportunities. If you want to bust ass in this country,
Yeah.
I don't care if you're an Uber driver. I have a friend who was doing rides on the side before Uber came around. Airport driver, you'd call the guy, like, hey, come pick me up, take you to the airport, $100. Take me here, $100, right? And this guy went from that to driving literally, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, to now having a limo company,
Yeah.
to now having 7 cars in his fleet, to now having 7 drivers work for him, and he still drives 15 hours a day. It's called drive. If you want it in this country, I don't care what you do, you can get it.
How did you instill it in Marcus and your son?
So by example,
I mean, we're sitting in his store. This is his store, by the way. This is his sneaker shop.
By example.
Okay.
By example. First of all, let's just say I'm a lot more comfortable today than I was when we came to America.
Sure.
Right? And my kids grew up what you can say with a spoon in their mouths. My children know that they have to go to work at the age of 15, no matter what, no matter how. I will provide them an education. I will provide them a roof over their head. I will provide them all the advice in the world. But I don't care. The minute you turn 15, you get a job. And it's not me saying, hey, you're 15, go get a job. It's when my daughter, who just turned 15, that when she was 14 and a half, she's like, okay, it's 6 months to go. Where am I going to go work? You know, oh, Dad, can you go talk to the owner of that restaurant you go to often? Sure, no problem.
Okay.
Hey, Dad, what do you think of this job, right? It's, you instill that in them. You instill the value of money. My kids understand what things cost around the house. My kids understand what it takes to make the money. And I've always talked to my children since the day we were born as if they were adults. It's the stupidest thing ever. Marcus was 6 months old, a year old. I spoke to him. He didn't even talk yet, but I spoke to him as an adult. And I think somewhere in the back of his head that instills. We instill family values first and foremost. We instill religion. Mm-hmm. And not on a fanatic level, but on a level of keeping up with your traditions, knowing all your holidays, understanding all those things, right? And you don't see me wearing a black suit and a black hat, right? Sure. But at the same token, religion is a big part of our life.
You got Rosh Hashanah. We got Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, we got New Year's coming up. That's
Yeah.
right, Friday. With that said, it's instilling family values first and foremost. And number one advice I give to anybody: if you want to have a great kid, you need to talk to your kid.
Yeah.
If you don't talk to your children, you're fucked. Because time will go by, turn around, they'll leave the house, and you'll never hear from them again. I speak to my son daily. My wife likes to speak to him 3 times a day, which gets borderline annoying because she misses him so much because he recently moved away.
Yeah.
But that family dynamic is the most important thing. And if there's one thing you can do is talk to your children. And if you have it to where you're able to spoil your kids, don't. Spoil your kids with experiences rather than monetary things. That's the only thing I will tell you. Because experiences, you can spoil them all you want. It'll make them well-rounded. My kids are well-traveled. They've been to every major city in the United States. They've been to every sports hall of fame in the United States, and Toronto, which is hockey, obviously. They understand art, history, food. Whenever we go on a trip, it's all about, hey, we got the museums, we have the food, we have the toy stores too. Don't get me wrong, that's going to be in there. There's going to be the fun kid stuff. Don't deprive them of that. And now day and age, fast forward, this wasn't an issue with Marcus, but now day and age, electronics.
What's your take on that? Because I have a real...
My problem is this. When I walk into a restaurant with my friends, 20 of my friends, and there's 20 kids at the table doing this, you know what my daughter is doing? She has a bag of crayons. She has a Lego set. She has clay, something to keep her busy, but not that, because that makes them zombies. And I know this on a professional level because we do social media marketing. We know how to reel in customers, right? And I understand the power of all that, right? So, and it's the... TikTok is crack.
Listen, I'm sorry. I'm gonna intervene because I'm really passionate about this topic. Like for me, you know, I've been doing social media for several years. You've been doing social media for several years. You and I both know how these algorithms work, right?
Of course.
They present sensational content. They measure the fact that you're engaging in this content. Then they give you another piece of sensational content, and then you know your feed is just this garbage. And the thing is that the people who are the people who are creating content, they don't give a shit about your kids. They care about monetizing their attention, right? The people who are creating it. And the platform's the same way. So they don't care about bettering your kid. They don't care about educating your kid, teaching them good values, morals. They just care about getting their attention at all costs. So no matter what nasty shit they have to show them, they're going to show it to them. And then your kid turns into, quite frankly, an idiot programmed by a machine.
What is a child growing up? My youngest daughter is 7 years old. She's about to be 8, right? What does a child crave coming up at an age where they are? They crave knowledge. Their brain is a sponge that wants to suck in information. This is the easiest way to suck in information. But it's up to you to choose what type of information that child sucks in. So what do? Books. If you look at my daughter, she makes her birthday wish list on Amazon, right? There are 2 dolls on that list. 80% of that stuff is books. Right now she got into geology. She wants to learn about gemstones, a ton of books of geology. Then she gets into marine biology. Why? Because I let her watch Octonauts. I don't know if you know that show.
I know.
It's an extremely educational
Just, you know, I've got a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
So you know about Octonauts. So Octonauts you can actually pick and choose content that your kids will watch. Octonauts is a piece of content I want her to watch because it teaches her about marine biology. Ask my now 7-year-old anything about a sea creature, she will spit out facts like, who are you, right? So it's everything in moderation. My daughter does not watch TV every day. She's allowed to watch X amount of TV, and now on her own, I see the content that she chooses to watch, and she chooses to watch educational content rather than stuff that just like fills her brain with nonsense.
But it's hard to do. Like you must be spending a lot of time.
You know how hard it is to go to a dinner with 10 of your closest friends, and kids her age are all on their iPhones playing video games, and she's not allowed.
Bro, I got to tell you, I had this messed up experience. I was in London, and in London they have like a solid Russian banya there. I don't know if you've been down there, like a sanduni.
I never been to a banya in London. I've been to London plenty of times, but I've never went there.
Beautiful high-end banya, and they had these private rooms, and I was there with my buddies in this private
Russian
room.
spa house, for those that don't know what a banya is, by the way. You know, when guys beat each other with sticks. You've probably seen videos of that.
I don't think they know about the stick beating. Some of them do. Some of them do. So I found this place. We had like this private room with the sticks and everything, cold plunge, you know, everything. So I brought my kids. I said, okay, I'm going to bring my 2 older boys. The little guy's he's too small. I brought my 2 older boys the next day, and we got together. A bunch of dads brought their sons, and there were maybe 10 kids, 10 boys. My 2 boys and 8 other boys between like 3 or 4 other dads. And one guy brought his fucking phone. And he had a kid who was a little older, maybe 12. This kid was on his phone. That's it. The fucking banya was over. And all the kids, they're all boys. Because we're all together, right? They're all just sitting around this kid. And that experience that I wanted to share with my children of going to the banya, it's finished. Because how am I going to get them? That's it. I can't get them off of this thing. What am I going to tell this guy? I just met the guy. So when I tell him...
Do you know when Marcus was allowed to have a cell phone?
When?
When he was 12. Gia... Times changed, granted, a little bit, you know, it's a tiny generation gap, but even the world of social media electronics have changed since then. So Gia got her phone when she was 10. I She's only allowed to have one social media platform, and that's Snapchat, because this is how kids communicate now.
Yeah, for sure.
Snap me. I'm like, why can't you just call somebody, right? Because that's what we used to do. We used to call the house and have to go through the dad to talk to a girl, right? But Snap me, so Snapchat, yes. Any social media account that she has is private.
Yeah.
She has an Instagram account because she follows me and stuff like that. It's completely private. The other day, my social media manager decided to tag my daughter in one of my posts. She got 400 follow requests. She declined them all, so she knows.
Yeah.
And the beautiful part about this is that we raise them in a way where I don't have to check on them. I know that if she gets 500 follow requests on her private account, she will not accept them because she knows that's not acceptable. Not because we said so, because we explained to her, but that's the right thing to do.
Do you find it a challenge to lead by example in that realm because you're on social? A large piece of what you do.
Very difficult. Very
I have the same thing.
Because it's well, Dad, you're on social media all the time. Number one, I, for the most part, try to do my best to have breakfast with my girls because Marcus is out of the house now. I used to be with Marcus, so I have breakfast with my kids before they go to school. The second thing I do is I'm home every night at 6:30 on the dot. In my home, dinner is at 6:30. And my kids have gotten used to the fact that they know no matter what, 6:30, 6:31, 6:32, Dad is going to walk through the door. And we're all going to have dinner together. There's no phones at the table. Once in a blue moon, I'll get that phone call that I absolutely must take. I will say, excuse me, I'll take it. Sure. That happens once in a blue moon. If my phone rings, I silence it so that it's family time. That's what the family values come in. And that's one way to lead by example. But it's very hard. You're right, because when social media becomes a big part of your business, it's difficult.
I mean, for us, it's on top of that, the way we make money through corporate sponsorships, right? Through brands working with us. So my wife and I, it's we're always talking about which deal the team is working on. So my kids are so immersed in this that it is increasingly hard to create that divide. But we try.
The easiest way to do that is to show them that, hey, this is merely a tool for my business that I utilize for my business. But if you're going to be sitting on a couch when the kids are hanging out and the TV is on, but at the same time you're scrolling your phone, and I catch myself sometimes doing that. Even though I'm looking at my account, or I'm looking at my competitor's account, whatever it might be, I catch myself and I put it down. Yeah. So my phone time at home boils down to what every guy does. You go on the toilet and you turn on your phone, you catch up on your shit, and that's it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go back. I want to go back to your career and kind of to your come up. So, again, you have this work ethic. You decided. Sorry. After that, you finished high school and you went to the Army. So I'd love to understand. You're literally the only Jewish kid I know who went to the Army. So you want to?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story on that one. Ready? So it was high holidays. I'm coming up on now, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. And a letter comes down from the general's office because the Army is very, very sensitive to ensure that everybody's green and everybody gets the proper attention based on religion, color, skin, whatever it might be, right? Yeah. There's a letter that came down, and I looked up the statistics, So I looked up, okay, so X percentage is white, X percentage is black, X percentage is Hispanic, X percentage is Asian. Jewish was 0.007% of the U.S. military, which was me and Chaim across the street. Basically, that was it. But I'll tell you, I know where you're going with this question, so I'll answer it right away. I was always a firm believer that a military experience is good for a young individual. Especially in this country, because listen, back in Soviet Union, at 18, you were an old head, probably already married at some point, at least my parents' generation, right? The military is a great experience for those that are just coming out of high school, and the reason for that is because it instills a lot of great things in you. Number one, it instills discipline. Mm-hmm. Number two, when I came back from basic training, my friends would say, oh my God, why are you going? The military brainwashes you, this, that, and the other. The military is a very simple concept. It breaks you down mentally and physically to the utmost of your capabilities, and it puts you back together in a disciplined fashion. Wow. That should be a slogan, right? With that said,
you should be a recruiter.
And then when you come out and my friends are telling me, oh my God, you're brainwashed, it was that when it clicked. What I just said clicked just then. Yeah. I said, no, guys, they just make you grow up in a natural amount of time. Yeah. So I decided to be a scout. So my basic training, instead of being 8 weeks, it was 5 months. So by the time I came out of that, I was gung-ho G.I. Joe. So I was quote unquote really brainwashed. But all they do is they make you grow up in somewhat on a natural amount of time. But they do, they say the Army will make a man out of you. And that's literally what they do. And it doesn't matter if it's man or woman.
Whose idea was this? Was your dad?
Mine.
What did your dad say to you when you said, I'm going to the Army?
My dad is like, you're fucking crazy? What are you doing?
Yeah, I think most Jewish fathers do.
It's something I wanted to do. I'm a believer that it actually should be mandatory for everyone. And I know, call me old-fashioned, whatever. I think every boy should go and take part of. This is what happened in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Most countries around the world have mandatory military, and I think it's a great experience for a human being, whether you're a boy or a girl. And I think it should be mandatory, at least in some fashion, where at least you go through the military training, like the basic training. You don't have to join the army after that. Whether or not people agree with that or not is my personal opinion. Sure. But believe it or not, and people say it sounds corny, I came to this country and I love this country. And I felt that if this is a country that I love, why not serve it, right? I never planned ever to go more than the 3 years. I wanted to do that little bit of army, the bare minimum, get out and continue my career. I knew the army wasn't going to be a career for me, although it's very easy to fall into that because they take care of you better than your parents. You get a roof over your head, you get a steady paycheck, you get clothing, you get free travel. They do anything and everything to keep you in. Sure. They make it really, it's not the Soviet military. You know, you live like king when you're in the army. And I wanted just to serve my country. Like, I'm a fucking patriot. You know what I mean? Like, I love my country. And that's, by serving in the military, I'm proud of that fact, and I would recommend it to anybody else.
You know, I got to tell you, I think on a personal note, for me, one of my, I wouldn't say regrets because I don't really have regrets, but I wish I would have understood the difference between living in Canada and living in the United States much earlier. And I don't want to shit on Canada because Canada gave me a lot. We also came
Don't get me started on that. But
well, listen, that's a whole political thing. But, you know, because I know where you're going with that. But like, we came in 1976 when I was 3 years old as refugees, same as you did. And Canada took us in and really took care of us. And I left there 2.5 years ago. Yeah. So, but to me, it's such a massive difference that I'm experiencing between Canada and the United States.
Of course.
And not to shit on Canada, but like Canada is, I don't even, I don't want to get political.
Do you know I'm not going to get political. Do you know what we call Canada around here?
What's that?
So you know how like you have a house and there's an attic in your house? You know it's kind of up there, but you tend to forget about it. That's what Canada is to the United States. Yeah, that's a joke.
Like, no, look, that's fair. I mean, Canada is, again, I'll be careful about what I'm saying here, but Canada is far more socialist. And I feel that it's not officially a socialist country, but when living here for 2.5 years now, and I'm starting like to work and I'm seeing opportunities here, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like if I would have been here 20 years ago.
Now look at it through my eyes because I lived through that for 13 years of my life. And when I see those signs, they're a lot more vivid and a lot more. But let's not go political route because we'll be here all night.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, okay. All right. So
besides that, Canada has some of the most beautiful countrysides in the world.
Absolutely.
It's gorgeous in the winter. It's gorgeous in the summer. They have some really cool cities. You have the charm of being half French and half English.
Sure.
And I'm a big American history fan, or revolutionary history, American history, colonial history. That's one of my favorite subjects. That's why I like to read on in the museums that I go to. So visiting Canada in that aspect to me is absolutely great because there's a lot of that history there.
Yeah.
During colonization and all those things. So for me, Canada is a place that I like to visit, and I like to visit often. There's so many different places in Canada one can visit from a nature perspective, from a history perspective, from a modern perspective.
Yeah.
There's a lot of technological feats that are in the area of Toronto, which you probably don't even know about it because you never really got into it.
Right.
Do you know how your city is cooled?
How it's cooled?
Yes.
It's cold as fuck, dude. It's winter.
No,
what do you mean?
I'm talking about how it's
I know.
heated and cooled.
I mean, through air conditioning units and heating units.
How do they work?
On electricity.
No.
What do you mean?
You have a big lake there, right?
Yeah.
You have geothermal heating and cooling in your town that was built based on a tunnel that was dug in the 1800s. Google it, read it.
I will. I'll check it out.
It's a really cool fucking system. Some really ingenious engineers worked on it.
Well, I feel pretty stupid considering
but I get into these geeky things because I have my engineering passion and then I have my history passion. So there's a lot of those kind of.
So where does the engineering passion come from? Because what did you study at Penn State? Engineering. Electrical engineering.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why the hell it's.
So I was about to say, why did you pick that?
Majors in the world. Like I remember one of my classes, the passing curve was like a 50.
Your dad must have been proud. You're engineer, like.
Yeah, it's not. My dad was always proud in different ways. It wasn't about putting check marks in profession or this, that, and the other. I think it was just like overall success that he's proud of, regardless of what I would have done. Like, I could have been a singer,
Was he an entrepreneur?
Back in Russia, which was illegal.
But here, no, clearly.
Here he didn't have a chance to do so because he started working. Right, his first real job when we moved to Philadelphia, he was getting $8.75 an hour. Mm-hmm. He worked. It was actually a factory that you heard of Mars, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So it was a factory that produced the wrappers for all the candy bars and all that stuff, right? And he was in maintenance department fixing the machines that would do this.
What did he want for you growing up?
He just wanted overall success. Because you know how I'm sure your parents are the same. Everything we do is for the kids and this, that, and the other. And now I'm that parent. Everything I do is for the kids, and you know what I mean? Like, my dad didn't really quite have the handle of how not to spoil kids, and that's because I came from a broken home. My mother hasn't been around since I was 3 years old, so he always felt the guilt of trying to, overcompensate with material things and things of that nature. But he didn't know any better, right?
He's around, right?
Yeah, he's still here. He's 75 years old.
Okay, he's young.
Yeah. So he's 75 years young, you're right. So as he was doing the job, his real passion was always antiques, and he was very good with his hands. Back in Russia, what he did, no Soviet Union, that's just it. Now, when I came over here, I was like, hey, what are you? I'm Russian. Now it's like, no, I'm from Ukraine. Like, it's like, because of what's going on. It's just the weirdest shit ever.
It's interesting. I have that thing too.
I don't speak Ukrainian. I was born in Ukraine, but I don't speak Ukrainian.
I don't speak Ukrainian either. It's funny because I was born in Ukraine. My wife was born in Russia.
Yeah, now it's like
people are like, oh, you guys get along? And
people ask me, and I'm like, guys, it was the Soviet Union. There's no Ukraine. There's no Russia. Yeah, you have the republics, like you have states here. But
for sure.
Like, nobody. If you ask anybody in Uzbekistan, they would tell you that they're Russian. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
At least the kids.
Well, I bet your parents speak Ukrainian, or they spoke it at one point in their life. So they didn't even speak it.
Not really.
Well,
I'm from Odessa. Remember, Odessa was like its own country. So.
Yeah, this is true. I was on a call recently with somebody in Ukraine, and I'm always, before all this shit went down and, with this war, I would always speak with Ukrainians in Russian and be like, oh, you know what? I was born in Kiev and I can speak Russian, this and that. I started speaking Russian with this woman, man. She was
not happy about it.
She was, why are you talking to me? Like she was ready to hang up on me. I was like, no, relax. But I don't even speak Ukrainian.
I was, first time I went to visit Ukraine. I haven't been back in 20 years. My older sister was still around and she was there.
Yeah.
You need to get a visa. I go to the Ukrainian consulate and, small people, big places kind of thing, right? And this guy, it's like, I walk up to the window and I'm like, yeah, I'm here to get the visa. I waited in line for God knows how long. He starts talking to me Ukrainian. And I literally just heard him talk Russian 5 minutes ago to somebody else. And he's just being a bitch about it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't speak Ukrainian. I know you speak Russian.
You're telling him in Russian.
Yeah, I'm telling Russian. I don't speak Ukrainian.
Yeah.
And I just heard him talk Russian.
Yeah.
He's like, I can talk Russian or I can talk English. Ukrainian, not so much. I'm picking out what you're saying because the language is similar, but it's hard for me.
Yeah.
Straight Ukrainian. So then, you know what? I started talking really fast in English, like to a point where I was swallowing half my words and couldn't understand what I was saying. Like, he quickly switched to Russian, no problem. So I'm like, why are you being a dick? You know what I mean? Like, I'm going back to a country where I was born and this, that, and like, you really got to be a dick about it. And then I felt that when I got there a little bit, and now it's on. I was there right before the war started, 6 months before the war started. I took Marcus there for the summer show where I was born. He really loved the apartment. He was like, Dad, this looks like a crack house. I'm like,
wow.
Yeah, well. So long story short, I felt that nationalism, that Ukrainian pride and so on and so forth. But it's rightfully so. It's Ukraine, right? It was always Ukraine. It was always a different country, different people, and so on and so forth. So I get it. You go to Estonia right now, they don't talk in Russian. In fact, the current generation, Marcus's age, they have no idea how to talk Russian.
Right.
Their parents or grandparents do, but they don't.
You know where I just was? I was in Azerbaijan.
Oh, wow.
Which was, that place is a trip because that place is it's a former Soviet country.
Yeah.
And they're Muslims, so it's a Muslim country.
Same as Uzbekistan.
Same as
I'm sorry, Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, yeah. No, it was wild. That's a whole other story. Okay, so I'd like to understand how. Okay, so you finished Penn State electrical engineering, right? But how did you then get into? How did you become the VP at Deutsche Bank?
So here's the.
It's not even. You weren't even in finance.
I'm in school.
Yeah.
One of my classes, I'm building a fucking robot that has to play basketball, right? Not an easy thing to do.
A robot that plays basketball?
Yeah, it was made out of Legos. It played on a ping pong table, a little Nerf net, all by itself, right? I had to program it. The class that I took was programming, computer programming. It was basic computer programming, like zeros and ones and shit. And they teach you just basic, it was called NSIC for electrical engineers. So because you need to know that side of it in order to do what you do, to know the capabilities of a computer they can do for the devices you're going to make. And I really fucking liked it. In fact, my robot went to a competition, and I got second place, and I got my ass kicked by a 14-year-old kid.
Sorry, and you were how old?
Well, I was in college at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point, I'm like 21. And this 14-year-old kid, the competition was open to everyone, and they submitted my robot to the competition, and I got my ass kicked by a 14-year-old kid. I later found out that his father is a PhD, his mother in physics, his mother's a PhD in mathematics, and he's not gonna get laid until he's 30. But long story short, I got second place. With that said, I really like programming. And at the time, programming was heating up. You know how Russian community does. They're all like a fucking herd. They all follow each other. Yeah, programmer. At the time, getting out of college, I stood to make starting salaries. Again, doesn't seem like much now. Starbucks makes more. It was like $35,000 a year. But we're going back 25 years, right? Sure. So different times. It was a good salary. I mean, I guess comparable today to a starting salary of about 55, 60,000, right? And then I'm hearing these stories, these kids, they went to a programming school, 6 months later, they're out there making 40 grand a year, this, that, and the other. So I go to Barnes & Noble's, in case you guys don't know that, it's a bookstore. I go to Barnes & Noble's, and I pick up a book called Learn Visual Basic in 24 Days.
Okay.
I open up this book, it's a self-study guide, sit behind my computer, and I'm doing this, and I did it in 3 days, and I'm like, this is so fucking easy in comparison to statics and dynamics and the physics. And, you know, I'm in class trying to figure out how to solve 7 equations simultaneously with 7 unknowns, right? And here's this thing. I'm like, does it for you. Like, this is great. And I'm like, I'm going to go that route. And my first job, I walk into, it's a health insurance company. I get an interview. At the time, you get a headhunter. That was popular because these headhunters, they were after you like crazy. And I go to an interview, and it's a guy named Bruce. I still remember his name till this day. And he's passed away recently. He was an older gentleman. At the time, he was like 60. And I get into this interview, and this cool guy comes out. What's up? I'm Bruce. What's going on? This, that, and the other. A little personal thing. I tell him, you know, I just recently got out of the military. Oh, shit, I was in the military. Oh, where were you? I was stationed in South Korea. Oh, I was stationed in South Korea. We start talking about girls and partying and this, that, and the other. 45 minutes into it, I'm like, you know, you're supposed to interview me, not? He's like, oh, yeah. Pulls out a sheet of paper, and older generation, probably just learned how to turn on the computer, starts asking me all these programming questions. I answer one, I answer the second, he answers the third one. I'm like, Bruce, you have no fucking idea what you're talking about, do you? He's like, no, not really. I'm like, did another programmer write these questions for you? He's like, yeah, so I could have answered you anything, and you have no clue whether it's right or not. He's like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, so what the fuck's the point, right? He offers me, 2 days later, I get an offer of $45,000 a year. Mm-hmm. My head kind of calls me all excited. I'm like, you know what? I was really hoping to start at 50 grand a year. I had this stupid number in my head of starting at 50 grand a year, which is like a salary of somebody who's got like 5, 6, 7, 8 years experience. Yeah. He's like, let me see what I can do, but like it's already at like the top offer. Calls Bruce, and Bruce tells him, he's like, the max for this position is 45 grand. I was supposed to start at like 38, 40. It's like, I gave the guy the max because I like him. It's like, yeah, but he was really hoping. Fucking Bruce goes to whoever the powers that be, gets me a $50,000 offer, and I start my first job making 50 grand a year. I was just like, shit. Then I realized that the industry I want to be in, where the real money is in programming anyway, was banking. Banks pay the most. I jump ship. I go
After how long?
1 year, exactly. I jump ship. And the reason I jumped ship, and it was actually mutual because my manager at times like, listen, Roman, you're not going to grow here. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This is a government subsidized insurance company. You're not going to grow here. I go to Fleet Bank. I get I go through vigorous rounds of interviews because this is banking now. We're talking about 3 interviews. In 3 in-person interviews. We're talking about like testing, like vigorous, very vigorous. Yeah. Not what I had with Bruce. All right, like actual professionals asking me questions if I know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah, sure.
So finally, after 3 months, I get an offer, $59,500. Not bad, not a $10,000 bump, but a lot more opportunity. Yeah. Now comes orientation, training. It's like a whole to-do. Big corporate world, a huge bank at the time. They got bought over by Bank of America later. Yeah. I'm in this orientation, 3-day orientation, with this woman named Lynn. Mm-hmm. And I hit her off. Like, there's like 4 or 5 people in the room. We hit her off. We started talking, this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. Whatever. A week later, I go to start my job. And the building I was in, you basically had a bunch of cubicles in the middle and offices of managers around, right? And I remember, because last time I interviewed there was 3 months ago. I'm going to look for my boss. I walked around once. I remember his office was here. I walk by, I see Lynn, because I knew she was becoming a manager there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, Lynn, how are you? Talk to her for like 2 minutes. I'm like, I'm going to go look for my boss. I walk around again. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy? Turns out, while I was interviewed, the 3 months went by, that guy was let go, and Lynn was the manager.
Okay.
I walk around again. I'm like, I can't find my manager. She's like, well, what team are you in? I'm like, well, I'm doing... She's like, oh shit, Roman, I'm your manager. I'm like, great. We were like best friends at that point. You know, I had a great job, but that's when a girl reached out to me and said, look, consulting is heating up. You know, you're making 60 grand a year right now, and I had a cushy job. Like, it was easy. My boss was great. I loved her. She loved me. It was awesome. She's like, but you can make real money in consulting, but it's in New York. I'm not fucking commuting to New York. Back and forth, she's trying to convince me because she wants to get paid.
This was Deutsche Bank.
Yeah, as a consulting. So the problem is that, again, most of her she was in New York, so her consulting gigs were in New York. She's like, I'm like, Angel, I'm not going to New York. I'm not commuting 4 hours a day. You're out of your fucking mind. She calls me back for the 5th time. She's like, look, I got a gig for you, $75 an hour. That's 150 grand a year. That's triple what I'm making.
Nice.
I'm like, well, 150 an hour. I mean, 150 a year. I might consider commuting. I take the job.
So you were commuting from Philly to New York?
2 hours each way.
Why don't you just move to New York?
Because at the time, I was considering. I wasn't married yet. And I was considering it. And then I'm like, I looked at real estate over there. At the time, I had my own condo.
In Philly?
In suburbs of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I bought that condo for 100 grand. I got a VA mortgage, 0% down. Just like VA mortgage was very easy.
VA is?
VA veterans.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
as a veteran, you get a mortgage with a lower rate, and
Perfect.
you don't have to put any money down. The government basically guarantees your down payment.
Nice.
That's one of the benefits. Long story short, 1,200 square foot condo. My development has tennis courts, pool, beautiful life. I'm a single guy. I'm living life. And I started looking at real estate in New York. It was just like, I looked at something that was like so small that you could literally sit on the couch, flush the toilet, make fucking eggs, and wash your hands at the same time, right? And that was like $800,000.
Yeah.
So there's no fucking way. You know, you were poor in New York if you were making 150 grand a year.
So hence the commute 2 hours each way.
So I was commuting, and then 9/11 happened. Now, my
2001.
My offices were World Trade Center 4 and 130 Liberty Place. If you remember that unfortunate day, there was a building across the street that had a piece of World Trade Center stuck in it. Mm-hmm. That was 130 Liberty. And we also had World Trade Center 4. We also had offices in Midtown.
Where were you when this went down?
Luckily, I was in Midtown office. I was at 1251 Avenue.
But you were in New York.
Yeah, I was in New York when it happened. I saw it happen. I was there. I was walking around aimlessly around the street, couldn't get off the island. It was not the best memory of my life. It was a terrible memory. And again, we just, 9/11 was yesterday.
Yeah.
It's a memory that comes back every year, and it's not a good memory, but it makes you stronger, if you will. So on and so forth. And then the market took a shit after that, if you remember, and layoffs. Deutsche Bank lays off 15% of the company.
Including you?
No. My boss came to me and said, listen, Roman, you're a consultant. You're not a full-time employee.
Oh, okay.
I said, let me get you on as a full-time employee because otherwise I'm going to have to fucking fire you and I don't want to lose you. So I converted to full-time. My starting salary was $104,000 a year, seemingly a pay cut, but not really. 4 weeks paid vacations, health benefits, medical. When you add it all up, it came out to about the same money. Because back then I was paying for my health insurance. I was paying for a lot of these things when I was on vacation. I didn't get paid, right? So it made sense. And growth opportunity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit. Now, right around there, me and my wife decided it was time for me to get married. She was my best friend for 10 years.
Sorry, you have to say that again. Your wife decided it was time for you to get married?
Yeah, I was best friends with my wife for 10 years prior to that.
It's amazing how they lead us to believe that the decisions are ours.
Yeah, right.
My wife's the same way.
I'll tell you a story on that later. But so, and now by 2002, we're married. All right. And with that said, it's becoming harder and harder and harder. And that's when the whole watch side thing started, part-time. Once my wife was helping initially, which is why when people tell me, oh, you're the founder, my wife will be the first to say, no, I'm the founder.
Right.
She started this initially with me. She was helping. When my son was born, obviously there was no time, and I was doing 2 jobs.
Hold on a second. I need more of a bridge here in the story, because what you're doing at Deutsche Bank, on you're programming basically in the banking world. Right?
I kind of got away from programming. I was in charge of hardware for local and global payment systems.
Right.
And
hence the 40 billion a month.
It was more of a position of support. I was the guy to figure out when shit went wrong, and I got called in all kinds of hours a night. And then I would reach out to other teams to the tune of where I've had conference calls that involved 150 people to figure out what the problem is, just to find out that some janitor knocked out a fucking cord out of the server.
So okay, but where do watches come into play? I mean, you're doing because what you're doing professionally.
Now I'm sitting. So
I have sorry. Hold on a sec. Hold on.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked this long on camera or being recorded not about watches? I don't think you have.
I have.
Have you?
I have here and there.
Because I think this is the Roman Sharf that I think a lot of people don't know, because I've never seen any interview like this.
I knew a local guy in Philadelphia. It was a gray market dealer, not on the internet, that I used to buy a watch from. Like I used to buy jewelry from him, this, that, and the other. He worked out of his house. Next thing you know, he comes to my house. He's like, I want to talk to you. Mm-hmm. And he goes to me, Roman, you know all this computer shit, literally. I'm like, well, it's a little bit more fucking involved. I support a system with $80 million in hardware and $42 billion in transactions. So he's like, huh? You know computers, yes? Yes.
Yeah.
I sell watches. How about I give you my watches and you sell them on eBay because that's what's popping off. Mm-hmm. I'm like, who the fuck is going to buy $10,000 watches on eBay? And that's when my wife came in and said, Roman, I think it's a good idea. Hence, she calls herself the founder. Mm-hmm. I said, fuck it, let's try it. And the rest is history, as they say. Right? So that's how it started. It was an opportunity that presented itself out of thin air, really. And when I took that opportunity and ran with it, and it became what it became, that's what led me to where I am today. But a lot of people say, oh, wow, you got lucky. Fuck, I didn't get lucky. I was working 90-hour weeks. Oh, sure. How about this? Here's a stat for you. From the day my son was born to the day he was 1 year old, I didn't see him, meaning I saw him when I left the house at 5 a.m., he was asleep. And when I came home at 7:30, 8 p.m., he would be asleep for a year. Yeah. I got to interact with him on the weekends. During the week, I only saw him sleeping.
So what was that like? So you jumped into that business full, kind of like both feet. You have, at this point, you got some inventory together. I'm just trying to understand the mechanics.
I had no inventory just yet. I was starting to build up my inventory. When you said I started with $65,000, I actually started with $12,000.
That was one piece?
No, that was a few things.
What kind of stuff were you flipping back then?
I had some Duvant lighters. I had some cheaper bright legs. Yeah, prices were a little bit different back then. Sure, yeah. Rolexes, you could buy a Submariner for $3,500. Not, you know what I mean? So it was a little bit different.
Yeah. This is 2002 again.
Yeah. It was a little bit cheaper back then. But those Submariners, by the way, right now, a lot more money, but that's a different story. So if we're talking about
those subs are about nine grand, but okay.
Yeah. So if we're talking about what got me there eventually is that and I'm always be the guy that said, oh, God help me out and I got lucky and this and my wife always says, don't downplay the fact that you have bags under your eyes still because you slept an average of 4.5 hours a day. Sure. Right? And into that, I had to get him family time on the weekend because now I get a chance to actually play with my son. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Not to see him sleep. And kids, they tend to yell and scream at night too. So let's just say sleep was a bit of a luxury for the first couple of years. Tell
me how it started. What was the business model? I mean, I think you're oversimplifying it with just grabbing the watches, throwing them on eBay, and waiting.
It's not, because listen, the opportunity came in the fact that, remember, imagine you wake up tomorrow and the internet is born. And not in form of e-commerce as you know it today, but in form of a platform which is new. And all of a sudden you have to figure out a way. How about the fact that digital cameras were a new fucking thing. Yeah. Downloading those pictures was a new thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, getting a porn site up on the fucking internet back then took 40 fucking minutes. You know what I mean? Like, you're in a different world, and a lot of people that are younger, they can't relate to that.
It was a gold rush.
I mean, look, DVDs were just a new thing coming up, right? We're still dealing with CDs back then. There's so much. There's no flat screen TVs we're talking about. We're talking about something that's so new and so fresh. And often technology behind it is so slow because you're still dealing with dial-up. Yeah. You're still hearing all that. You know what I mean? Like, so it was so raw that it was taboo to most, right? People were always, afraid of computers still at that point. An average Joe was afraid to turn on a computer because they didn't know what they were doing. Mm-hmm. My thing was always say it's computers are dumb. It's not, you're the smart individual. It's just a machine. Yeah. But not everybody had the technology background. Not everybody had an understanding. Not everybody had a thing like. Hey.
So you were look. I mean, as much as you put in the work, and obviously you have a great work ethic, and you did it at the time. It's also about you were kind of at the right time at the right place with the right skill set. With the right skill set.
The right time at the right place. eBay was Klondike at the time. It was me and maybe 10 other guys selling watches on there.
So the tech is one part of it. The tech is one piece. But in terms of understanding watches, I mentioned at the beginning that you've got an unmatched knowledge of
Watches were always
watches.
attractive to me because of their mechanical nature. That's where the engineering passion comes in, right? But to me, I think most people will guess that that's what it was, but it's actually not. It's the historical factor because I love history, and there's so much history behind these little machines that that was the most amazing thing to me. How can one person invent this 200 years ago and it hasn't changed since? The technology is still the same because nobody can do better in 200 years. Well, how do you take something, the size of a quarter and make it show you what day it is, what month it is, what year it is, and so on and so forth mechanically, right? Or to, I don't know, fix a watch based on the effect that gravity has on a watch by a tourbillon like Brigade did. Those things were fascinating to me, but mostly it was the history behind them. Okay. How does a brand continuously stay operating for 250 years like Vacheron?
But from a practical perspective, you have to know what to buy, and you have to know how to at what price point.
It's an expensive fucking school.
Right.
It's a very expensive school.
Tell me about that journey. Tell me about tell me about the losses. Tell me about losing on the wave and buying a piece at the wrong price, it not moving, you having to slash it.
I didn't lose anything until probably 6 to 7 years into the business. And the reason for that is because, as you said, it was Klondike. It was an opportunistic time, okay? And it was a very simple formula. First of all, it was the world of ADs. They ruled shit. And everything was just there was really no big certified pre-owned market. It was really just brand new market, right? It was just a question, okay, the dealer gets 45 off. I'll buy 10 over cost. I can sell it at 30 off. Done. And somebody now has an opportunity in Bumblefuck anywhere to reach out to somebody on the internet and say, oh, shit, I can actually buy that watch without traveling 6 hours on a plane to go to the store to actually find that watch. Yeah. That's the opportunity where it came. That's why there really were no losses because the market was very set in stone. There was none of this, what you see in the last few years. No indexes created by Bloomberg. There was none of that shit. Right. It was just a straightforward good that you can get at a discount versus going to an AD and paying full price.
And it was based on MSRP. It was
exactly
right. So it was a percentage discount of MSRP. So you'd buy it for whatever 20 points less. And
there was no 2x, 3x, or 5x like we have now. There was no certain collectibles, if you will. Yeah. At the time I started, I could have bought a Paul Newman Daytona for $3,000 in gold.
The classic one?
Yeah. 6263 in gold today will cost you $150,000 or $250,000. Yeah. That's a watch I could have bought for 10 grand, 15 grand. People didn't get it. I was only 10 years separated from the time where people used to bring a gold Rolex to a pawn shop and they used to melt it for gold. So remember that it's just a very short amount of time. Right. So it was a completely different world back then.
So how did you scale the business?
So one of the things that once I decided to do this full time. Yeah. And I actually opened up because I was doing this out of my basement for 3 years. Yeah. I decided to actually open up an office, and it was technology, right? I said, okay, now the World Wide Web, because the first 3 years of my business was eBay. I quickly realized I actually started alongside with this guy named OJ, who's here from Florida, who then became WatchYouWant.com, and he was selling on eBay. And I told him, I said, and smart guy, Merrill Lynch products, same kind of story, corporate world, except he was on the money side. And I said, OJ, I said, you're banking too much on eBay. I said, you do realize the position that we're in. We're on a platform on which we're fully dependent.
The risk. You're talking about the risk.
The risk.
Yeah,
I said, we're on a platform that we're fully dependent of. Tomorrow, eBay doesn't like something. They shut us the fuck down. Our business is done overnight. Yep. I said, e-commerce is booming. Build a website. I'm building a website now. Build a website. Build a website. It's like, nah, dude, I'm good. I don't need it. Fuck that. eBay's so easy. I don't want to deal with all this nonsense. And because back then, building a website wasn't a matter of purchasing a license online.
There was no Shopify. There
was no Shopify, right? You literally had to get a proper programmer to build it. It cost a lot of money. Yeah. He's like, nah, I'm not investing into that. Lo and behold, he did get kicked off eBay later on. And then
why?
He got really cocky. He put a certain watch that belonged to a big celebrity. I think it was John Mayer's watch. It was a very rare Panerai that wasn't supposed to be visible. He made it visible, and he fucked up basically.
And they kicked him
off, right? And then it took him 2 years to recover, and then he built his website.
Okay.
So building a website was one thing. And then the business model was very easy. There was no such thing, I can't get something. All you did is you took an entire catalog of a brand, you slapped it on your website, you put a price of X off because you knew dealers will give you this off, and you would work on call while slowly building up your own inventory.
So let's say, for example, that black themes that I got from you 20 years ago.
That you bought a picture.
No, I realized that. I remember I called you. You're like, yeah, I got it. And you know what? Now I recall, I haven't thought of this in years, but I recall calling you and you saying, yeah, I got it. Come on over. I said, I want to come to Philly.
That means I got it.
No, but I don't think you.
That means at the time you called me, I didn't have it. What you bought was a picture, and 95% of my business was selling pictures. That was the business model,
Right?
Because that was the business model that was created. Today, it's frowned upon. Today, I don't sell pictures.
I remember saying to you, said, okay, like I'm going to be there in 3 days. Like, you sure you're going to have it? No, you actually told me you don't have it, but you're going to get it.
Exactly.
You were honest with
And
me.
I told you I'm going to have it when you get there.
Yeah, and I said, Roman, are you
That was
sure?
a risk on my part because I didn't know if you were going to show up.
True, and I never thought of it that way. But okay. So I remember specifically, there were two of us came. My partner Mike came. You couldn't remember. I don't expect you to. I don't expect you to. But I remember that like the two of us came, and I remember talking to Mike. I got off the phone with you, and I was like, I don't know. He says he's going to have it. He goes, well, what if we go all the way there? He doesn't have it. I'm like, I don't know. Shit, man. We'll lose 2 days and whatever, $1,500 each on a hotel and whatever. It is what it is. But he seems like a legit dude. I think he has it. Like, look at his website. Look at all these fucking watches. I didn't know that you didn't have the watches.
That's what most people got.
He
Like,
seems
oh my
legit.
God, this guy is a gajillionaire.
But I had to come and check you out because I wasn't going to buy it sight unseen. I at least wanted to see your operation, and I wanted to look you in the eyes because it was a lot. Like back then, it was whatever, 16, 17 grand, and I was nervous about it.
A lot of money back today as well.
Right.
So this day, some people are very nervous, but my excuse is, people still call me nowadays. It's like, well, how can I trust you in this, that, and the other? I'm like, honestly, and I say with all due respect, I said, if you can't trust to do business with me remotely, i.e. online, you shouldn't do business online, period. Because all the tools at your disposal, the reviews, the FaceTime phone calls, physical location you can come to. I'm like, it's all there. I stop, proving people that, look, I'm a good guy. I'm not going to fuck you. But,
I don't think you need to. I mean, at this point,
I don't. I really don't.
You have a reputation.
But I still, till this day, clients that are uncomfortable, my entire sales team, myself included sometimes, will make sure that they are comfortable regardless.
How quickly did the business scale?
So once I went full time, the business literally tripled in a year. And remind you the timing, right? But
and your wife was working with you?
No. My wife went back to corporate after some time being home with Marcus. She went back to corporate, and luckily a few years later, I came to her when I saw her because my wife is very old fashioned. She worked at Campbell Soup. Now, she finished college summa cum laude. Did really, really well. Her first job also got stupid money. Then she moved on to Campbell Soup, and she would come home late, still cook dinner. So she was tired. And I finally told her, listen, we're in a position where luckily your $55,000 a year salary is becoming a lot less important than you spending time at home with kids, which she absolutely fucking hated. But she also agreed that, something is going to give. And what's more important? Family.
Yeah.
And that's why from then on, now I have 3 beautiful, well-raised, behaved children.
Yep.
She likes to say she has 4 beautifully raised children, myself included, well-behaved, right?
Yeah.
But till this day, we always talk about it. She says, I still wonder where I would be, what I would be doing, but I wouldn't change it for the world, knowing the kids that we raised.
Yeah.
So. But business started scaling fairly quickly, and the way the growth happened is when I started slowly transitioning from selling pictures at a set margin to actually going out there, purchasing goods, getting into pre-owned goods. And then I discovered that, look, this is not just a flat market, what it always was. This can be a not so flat market. And that's when I get into limited edition offshores, AP.
Hold on a second. Before you go into the limited edition offshores, that transition, you're very casual about that transition, but financially going from, selling something before you have it, meaning not having to put the money up, to taking on inventory.
That business model lasted a long time.
Which one? The not having the inventory.
The air inventory.
No, I know, but when you were just very casual about saying, then I started buying watches. But like to buy watches, you have to have millions of dollars. You right now have millions of dollars sitting in inventory, and it was
a slow, painstaking process.
Right.
But to me, I looked at it a little bit different. I looked at it as reinvesting into my business, much like I bought an office, installed a bank vault, hired employees, hired more employees. That was me investing back into the business. It wasn't me. I could have sat in my basement clocking for another 5 years.
Yeah, but infrastructure investment and inventory investment are very different.
So
if you buy the wrong pieces, you're stuck, especially your margins aren't that high.
But at that point, I already have experience.
Yeah.
I already have exposure. Already at that point, I'm the go. There was no Chrono 24. I was the Chrono 24. Everybody would go log onto my website to look at the retail price, look at the pricing, and I was that index. I was that Chrono 24.
Yeah.
Right. So at that point, it's easier when you're first.
I used your. That's how
everybody used our website.
I used your site,
including all the other dealers.
Yeah.
All of 47th Street used our website, right? Because it was always up to date. It was always done right.
Yeah.
But look, you slowly fall into it because you realize that you can't go on forever working on 5 to 10% margins, right? Sometimes you got to go out and find those deals. And what really did it in is when I realized that, look, there are markets within this market, and that's just a flat market. You can corner certain.
What does that mean, markets within the market? Like
for the most part, it was a pretty flat market, with a pretty flat margin, a pretty flat, straightforward approach, right? And the more people got into it, the harder it became to sell, and potentially the less you can make. So you have to do something else. I bought a limited edition Royal Oak Offshore Juan Pablo Montoya, 1,000 pieces made in titanium. At the time, the retail was $14,700.
With the
carbon bezel.
The carbon bezel, yeah.
At the time, the retail was $14,700. Then they quickly, like in 6 months, changed the retail.
$14,700? It's nothing.
Then they changed the retail to like $17,000. It was like $14,700. Then it went to like $17,400
the gold
very
one?
quickly. No, the titanium. The
Titanium.
titanium.
Okay.
The gold one, the retail was $28,000.
Right. Yeah.
The platinum was, I think, $50,000.
I had a Rubens Barrichello back in the day.
Oh, there you go.
Gold one. Yeah.
I love that watch. So long story short, this is limited to 1,000 pieces. Yeah. There's got to be a market. There's got to be something out there that's going to hype this up. Now, mind you, I don't have Facebook. I don't have Instagram. I don't have my YouTube channel to hype this up.
You're going based on your own
instinct. I have a client list. I have the fact that bigger is better is the boom at the moment. And I have the fact that there's only 1,000 of them made. So I buy one for $14,700, I sell it for $17,700. I buy one for $18,000, I sell it for $19,000, $20,000, $22,000, $24,000, all the way out to get up to $35,000. And other limited editions started coming out. And based on the hype of that particular watch, all the other ones were like, oh my God, now this put in that little bit of an investment feel into people, right? Which is everything that people talk about in the industry now. It's an investment. Back then, it was an expensive toy. All of a sudden, people are starting to see the value. I go backwards. End of Days, the first limited edition that AP made, right, back in 2001. It was for the movie End of Days. I find a client who's crazy in Chicago that wants to buy them all up. A watch that sold for $9,000 went up all the way up to $60,000, mainly because of this one guy. And I sourced most of them, also 1,000 pieces, actually 500 made. And all of a sudden, that created that little boom within the industry. And when that little boom is created, then other little booms start to pop off, right? Patek's all of a sudden popped off really heavy duty. It wasn't the Nautiluses, not the watch you're wearing. It was the dressier stuff, the 5970s, the 5070s, the limited editions that they made. They make very few limited editions. Yeah. And all of a sudden, that market starts to boom a little bit. And now you're starting to see somewhat what the Wall Street Journal will call an index or a market. Mm-hmm. What we saw is just stuff going up in price. And as long as you're at the right place at the right time and you're able to take advantage of that, you're able to grow with that market, and you're able to grow mainly not the business, but the audience and the client list. And that's really what it came down to. It was the biggest thing that I did, and the best thing that I did was to grow a client list.
So, sorry to interrupt, this client list, and I think that's important, I think, for the people listening, is that, when you're building a client list and you're building your reputation, these are direct relationships. I mean, social media, we're going to get to social media.
And word of mouth.
And right. So even for me, when I bought that watch from you, people say, where'd you get the watch? I was like, yeah, this guy, Roman, he's in Philly. You can trust him. Just buy it on the internet.
Exactly.
So I had to pay to come see you.
So others didn't have to.
So others didn't have to.
The best part about it is that because I started out of my basement, because I started out of, just a one-man show, right? I was shipping, receiving, marketing, you name it. Till this day, I have clients that call me. I haven't spoken with them in 15 years. I just happen to have their number in my cell phone, right? And it's crazy. But I'll pick up the phone. Hey, what's up, Serge? Like, wow, we haven't talked in 15 years. Do you know who this is? I'm like, yeah, Serge from Toronto, whatever. Yeah. Right? And they're like, they get taken back. Now, I pass that on to not my sales team, obviously, but still, I talk to clients. I have a client that visited me in my basement in my house when I first started from LA. I still talk to this guy till this day. I spoke to him 3 days ago. You know what I mean? He's bought millions over the years from me. We become really, really good friends. And anytime he needs something, his friends need something, he just calls me. And I do pick up, and I do make the sale, and I do give him the attention, right? It's just building that Rolodex is what actually propelled it to the next level. And then became the tricks of e-commerce, keeping up with the Joneses, right?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, in what way? What do you mean keeping up with the Joneses?
Technology.
Right.
SEO started coming into play.
Right.
Google started coming into play.
Were you feeling the pressure of competition at that point?
Of course. But again, when you're first, it's easier. And that's why being one of the first in this industry made my life a bit easier, because the rest of the guys still had to deal with the trust issues. Technology wasn't easy back back then. Shit would fucking break, and it was moving at such speed, and you had to keep up with it all the time. You had the SAPs that came out, the NetSuites, and all that other stuff, right? And we've tried it all, right? And then plugins and this and that, and you didn't know which way to go. Do I stay with my?
Who was managing all that tech for you? You?
No, I had a program. I have a program. He's still with me.
Okay.
It was a custom built solution. Then we didn't have out-of-the-box CRM system. I built my own CRM system.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now it's like I had a custom built CRM system that was borderline AI. It would learn based on inquiries coming in. Like I had an inquiry would come in. Hey, I would like to buy this IWC, right? Reference number such and such. It would go into my system. Once it goes into my system, it would pop up as a notification. And this is web technologies now. And then it would automatically send out an inquiry to 20 dealers that were on the list for IWC. Mm-hmm. When the response would come back, it would automatically get the price. And now when I open up the inquiry, it says, hey, this guy wants this IWC. These 7 dealers have it. These are the prices.
You're talking about a web submission. So it started with like a consumer online.
Exactly.
He submitted that to you. You created who programmed this database to check all the dealers with those?
We did.
You were plugged into their inventory?
No. It was automated based on emails. So
on emails,
so I know today it sounds like this is some kind of bullshit, but back then that's the technology we had. So you submit an inquiry online, it comes into me in form of an email. Joe Schmo wants an IWC big pilot. Reference number, blah blah blah. Because when you click the inquiry button, I'm passing all that data along with that embedded into the email that I get. And my system now takes that email and it says, oh, Joe Schmo wants this IWC. Who do I have for IWC? Here's a list of dealers in the database that I deal with that have IWC that I update every so often.
So you don't know if they have
an automatic email. I'll go because back then
all of them.
Because back then nobody was texting.
So was there human intervention on your side at any point?
So wait, it goes out to them. These dealers, they reply to the email. My system reads in the reply. Such and such guy replied, this is the price. This was literally parsing out an email, that type of code. Oh, and then when I open up the inquiry, every so often later, I see, okay, Joe Schmo wants an IWC, 7 of these dealers have it. Here's who has the best price. Here's the rating of this dealer, who I'd rather do business with, who I trust more, who's better, who's worse.
You talking about dealers like who deal direct to consumer or just wholesalers or both?
I'm talking about
guys like
authorized dealers.
Oh, ADs, okay.
It's the world of AD back then. And now I'm able to say, and I even was going to get it to a point where it was going to automatically quote the person.
Oh, wow.
And because when people inquired back then, everybody knew that we were all selling pictures. The question wasn't how much or best price. Yeah, that was one of the questions. But how long for delivery was the number one question. I can have it to you in 3 days. I can have it to you in 4 days.
So and which is when you and I met, you didn't have that.
No.
But you knew already that you would get the piece. So you took that ability to quickly source through your network, you automated it, and you started pushing it out at scale.
Fortunately, back then, to get an Automars, it was not like today. I could call 10 different dealers and get it.
Sure. So. Yeah, it was easy. It was easy. Okay, so look, it's incredible the way you scale that business and use technology to do so. In terms of social media, let's kind of fast forward because you at some point, the light bulb went off.
So,
or it's you got caught.
You asked me how I scaled my business further. At some point on, I ran into some people and they're like, "Why aren't you coming to trade shows and doing wholesale?" I'm like, what the fuck is that? He's like, you come to a show, you lay out your stuff, you sell to another dealer a little bit cheaper. And I'm like, why the fuck would I do that? I get 100 inquiries a day. People want to buy retail. I set a price. He's like, no, but this is where you make more connections. This is where you're able to do this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay, I'll try it. I went to a trade show. Best and worst thing that ever happened to me.
Best and worst,
okay. And I realized that because the best thing happened is it allowed me to scale my business, and I shifted focus away from retail and into wholesale. And for about a good 8 years, my focus was on wholesale. And my company became, at the peak, 90% wholesale, 10% retail.
Wow.
That got me behind on technology because I wasn't paying attention. It got me behind on a lot of things. But it scaled my business to a $100 million company a year. This is when I started dealing with manufacturers direct, buying closeouts. Believe it or not, I had Richard Mille closeouts. I know it sounds fucking funny right now, but I had Richard Mille closeouts where I was buying Richard Mille's pennies on $1 direct. Audemars Piguet was another one. So
closeouts from the manufacturers?
Yes, from the manufacturers.
They couldn't move their own pieces? I don't understand. Through their ADs?
No. The watch market is huge. We're talking about millions and millions of pieces across hundreds of brands, right?
Right.
What do you think? They all sell out? No. Well, now they do. I know it sounds funny today, but back then it was
for display only. You know what I mean?
Imagine imagine the popularity of the industry today versus 10 years ago was night and day.
Yeah.
You know, it's 10 times fold now. Why? Because of social media, because of the flex factor, because of celebrities. It wasn't that visible back then. It was a boutique with a guy with white gloves and a suit.
Yeah, well, I think it's
zero
important.
visibility.
Yeah, look, I agree. I think it's important because I think some people may look at kind of what happened to you and say, "Oh, he was lucky. You know, he was in. You know, he caught the wave." But the thing is that you continued because I've been watching.
I was always shifting. I was always shifting.
You have to because things change so quickly.
If your business is this, that means it's dying.
It means it's dying. Listen,
right? So wholesale.
Yeah,
I get into wholesale. I scale my business to 100 million a year. Now I'm traveling all over Hong Kong. I'm traveling all over the world. I'm doing 20 trade shows a year. I am the guy that now guys like me go to buy shit.
Okay.
Right? And it's great.
Volume game.
One problem. Wholesale, B2B, and wholesale in our industry is not somebody that comes in and buys 100 watches. It's selling to another dealer, just so to put it in perspective.
You're selling one at a time to another dealer.
It can be one, it can be 100. But most people associate wholesale, oh, this guy will bulk selling. Like I'll sell 100 pairs at a time. Like how my son started his business, right? No. Wholesale in our industry simply means I'm selling to another dealer who's going to resell it, right? B2B. So the business scales, it's great. One downside to that. Obviously, I'm behind on technology on the internet thing. I'm no longer sort of that, big authority competitions. There's tons of websites out there.
You're not
now.
pushing social media either.
Well, not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Long story short, I'm like, okay, this is a problem. I woke up one morning, I had 30 million in receivables. That's $30 million that people owed me.
No, I understand what receivables are, but you were giving terms? Why?
Of course. That's the nature of my business. You give terms, a wholesale level. Hey, 30 days to pay, this is the price, right? You make more money that way too. You sort of become a bank. I now have 25 million in payables at any given time because I'm also taking credit at the same time to scale. And I have things like bad debt expense, guys going bad, guys dying in plane crashes, numerous months of a certain percentage is bad debt, i.e. I'm not collecting it. And I have what's called debt inventory, because when you're buying closeouts and you say you buy 1,000 pieces at a time, you're going to get a lot of good shit, but you're also going to get a lot of bad shit that's just going to sit, right? That you not have to depreciate or lose money on and so on and so forth. But right before COVID, I said, I've had enough. I'm going back to the basics. I'm going back to what I used to be, and that is the biggest, baddest retail operation out there. Except I'm not going to do the traditional way of marketing. I'm not paying Google $100,000 a week or a month. I'm going to do any of that shit. We're going to go brand name recognition route.
How?
By putting a camera on my fucking desk and start talking.
Social media. Now social media comes in. Do you feel you were late to that game?
No. Because I feel I have the best fucking personality and the best amount of knowledge. And not just a personality.
I agree. And I'm not just here.
You're never too late. That's one advice that if whoever's listening, it's one advice you take. You're never too late to anything. If you can do it, just do it. Mm-hmm. I say there was a super smart guy that once said, when it comes to this type of game, and you should relate to this because you're in this industry, it's the 3C: creative, content, consistent. Mm-hmm. Do you know who said that?
Yeah. No, I don't.
I did.
Okay. Content consistent.
Creative, content, consistent. Right?
Yeah.
And in that time, it was YouTube, it was Instagram, and all the other social media.
What does your infrastructure look like for social media, or just for content in general?
I have 3 full-time videographers.
Yeah.
I have 3 full-time photographers. I have a full-time graphics designer, and I have 3 full-time social media people.
I have a feeling you're giving your son advice on how to do this too.
Yes. In fact, because I told him because he was wholesale since he was 14 years old, and when he flipped over to retail, I said, listen, don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
You have the personality, you have the looks thanks to your father, and you look at it, because when he started putting dollars behind it, he's like, well, shit, that's expensive. I said, it's worth every fucking penny. And you can relate to that. A short time later, his YouTube is blowing up, his Instagram is blowing up in a short amount of time. It took me a year to get 15,000 subscribers on YouTube. It took you how long? 6 months? Half a year, right?
What's interesting is that, his generation and his age, I bet that his friends who are his age, they don't have fathers who are as tuned in to technology and social media and pop culture the way you are.
You know what the funny part is that I try my best not to be that dad, my father's generation to tell him what to do.
Yeah.
I try to do my best to get him to a point where he'll come for me for advice.
Yeah.
And what he doesn't understand is that while we have conversations on topics of whatever it might be it business, finance, be it marketing, whatever it might be, is that as I'm giving him advice, I'm getting advice back. Because what he doesn't realize is now I'm getting an outlook of a 20-year-old to give me feedback on what I'm telling him. And I'm able to look at the world through his lens, which is advice in turn to me. And there are a lot of things that he said, or even asked me questions on, that I later took back to the office and talked to my people about, say, hey guys, check this out. Because the way they see shit, the way they view technology, me and you still view technology from the time where that technology didn't exist. To them, it's now second nature. It's like, it's just there.
To me, it fascinates me, the efficiency, the way that we can get to people, the way that, this podcast, the way I'm going to cut this podcast and distribute it to multiple platforms, and the amount of people who will actually see it, even at a relative, I'm still starting out with this particular podcast, but it's just incredible what the technology is able to do. And in your industry, when you see, look, there's now a lot of people, and they're trying to be sensational. Like, the one guy comes to mind that I saw you make a video with him, with Nico, and it's all about sensationalism, and
he's the funniest fucking guy.
He seems like it.
I know him personally, and when he's here, he stays at my house. In fact, he
stays at your house.
He conceived this baby in Marcus's bed. Marcus is really not happy about that whole ordeal, right? Because Marcus was already in Miami. He stayed over with his wife, and the baby was literally conceived in his bed. Because 9 months later,
did they name him Marcus?
No, they did not. They should have, actually. Now that I think about it,
it's not a bad idea.
But you see a lot of personalities, and people tell me this, when they talk to me, like, you're the same on video as you are in person. And I was like, well, because otherwise it doesn't work. If you're not going to be genuine, if you're going to make up a character, it's never going to work. So what you see with Nico, that's him, but he's even worse in person.
Stop.
My 7-year-old is in love with him. She's like, when is the fat funny guy from Ireland coming again? Because he's fucking hilarious.
Guys, for the record, he's from UK. He's not from Ireland.
So he's from Northern Ireland, which
is he really?
Yeah, which is
he lives in UK,
which is UK. So Northern Ireland is UK,
okay.
right? All right. So he's from Ireland, but Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK. You have Ireland, which is European Union. You have Northern Ireland, which is UK. And if they try to combine it, there'll be another war. But that's politics.
Right.
So he's originally Dutch.
Okay.
So he's originally from the Netherlands, and he moved to Ireland, gave everything up, and decided to start a watch business. Another success story. But he's fucking hilarious. His personality is second to none.
Would you say, I mean, it's interesting, you said like he sleeps in your house and you're obviously good friends with him. Would you say that in your industry, I mean, now that there's competition, there's Eric, there's Nico, there's the
So Eric is not competition. Eric is the OG of the YouTube game. He's the one that started all that shit. He was the first, one of the
He started at CRM.
At CRM, he was the first watch channel to get to 100,000 views. When he left CRM, he got another channel to 100,000 views. So he's the OG of watch content on YouTube, right? He's the godfather of watch stuff on YouTube.
Fair. But my question to you is that, okay, so just to run a parallel, like, you know, my wife, as you know, she's an influencer and she does fashion, and it's got its own.
I know, I went down a rabbit hole a little bit.
Yeah, so just like you have your genre of, you know, of talking about watches, my wife has her genre of, like, you know, women who are, you know, at a certain age range who are followed by women. So they're not like pretty women followed by men, they're pretty women followed by women, and they talk about fashion and lifestyle and parenting and all this shit, right? So with them, I don't see competition. I see constant camaraderie, because the revenue model there, it's not so obvious.
Those that are smart in my space, I've always said it, I work with my competition instead of against them. And those that are smart in that space, where there's camaraderie.
So do you so like with Valeria, like she's always trying to collaborate with other people to expose them to her audience and to expose her.
I do the same. So, and we share between me, Watch Eric, Nico, we share CRM, we share the same audiences. A lot of it is the same audience.
Right.
But what Nico does, and Nico's concentration, because he's a fairly new watch business, his concentration is on both, which sometimes tears him into pieces.
On the content.
I'm like, are you a fucking YouTuber or are you a watch dealer? No, I'm a watch dealer. I'm like, I don't know, bro. Nico does a lot of horizontal stuff, which is what
Sorry, what does that mean?
So we have vertical growth. If I'm staying in my space, in my lane with watches and maybe a little bit of jewelry, I'm growing vertical. Yeah. I'm staying within my space, where Nico ventures out to other spaces, right? So he's growing somewhat horizontal as well.
When you say other spaces, I mean, what does he do besides watches?
He did a video with Joshua Weissman, one of the big food guys on YouTube. It was the most fucking hilarious. If you watch any video, go to Joshua Weissman's channel, watch the video where Nico was cooking with him. Okay. I fucking died. It was so hilarious. He also took down 6 shots of tequila while he was doing it, so it was great.
I saw him with Ryan Serhant.
Yes, he did a thing with Ryan Serhant. He did things with DDE out in California with cars, golf, this, that. So, but he is also a business where the media side of his business brings him a significant amount of revenue.
Something like brand deals.
Not just brand deals. Fucking what YouTube pays him. That alone is a big chunk of change.
Sure.
So YouTube pays me a decent amount too on a monthly basis because I do get a lot of views. That money I accrue as a bonus to my videographers and my social media team, right? But it's a decent chunk of change by the end of the year, believe me when I tell you, right? It's pretty good income for anybody out there. And Nico is sort of like, his watch business is growing, but at the same time, his media empire is growing like crazy as well with sponsorships and things like that. I don't do any of that stuff. A lot of times you'll see me unbox certain clothing or something else. I do it for free if I like the product.
Right.
So if somebody writes me an email and I like their story, I will plug them for free. I like doing that.
How often are you in front of a camera?
Fucking 24/7.
Yeah, right.
I'm in Miami 2 days. I've had a mic attached to me the entire 2 days. We don't script anything, so it's a reality type of TV show. So cameras are on all the time. Because you never know when somebody's something is going to happen.
Okay, look, I want to flip the script a little bit, and I want to flip things because although this podcast is about talking to people about their come up and about their rise and everything, which again, ton of value, but I can't, in good kind of faith, have you on this podcast and not talk about watches.
Right.
Myself, being a collector and an enthusiast, I got a few questions that I prepared for you that I'd like to run by you. So, first of all, what was your first significant watch?
My personal first
your personal first significant watch.
It was before I was in the business. A buddy of mine owned a pawn shop in Atlantic City, and it was an old 4-digit Datejust that I bought for $1,000. And the best part about that watch, they call Rolex the first money watch. Oh, it was the first money watch. My Rolex walked into the room 5 minutes before I did. Like, this is how
Did you put a diamond bezel on it?
No, I did not.
No,
I did not. It was the fact that it was a Rolex was enough.
Gotcha.
That was after I got my corporate job at Fleet at the bank. Okay. My first bank.
Was that 36 millimeter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Two-tone?
No, stainless steel.
All right.
1.6. I don't remember. It was an old 4-digit old.
You still have it?
It was beat to shit. Unfortunately, I don't.
You regret it, right?
I regret it. I do regret
that Submariner that I got.
You know what I still do have though?
What?
I have my military watch. Which I bought at the PX for $40.
It was like a Swiss Army?
No, it was like some janky digital watch.
That one you got?
Yeah, it was $40 at the PX in the military. That one I still have.
Okay, I'm assuming you have a personal collection, right?
Actually, I don't.
Come on.
I promise you, I do not have a personal collection. And this is a recent thing, maybe as of about 4 or 5 years ago. I used to have a personal collection. I used to keep watches until what would happen is that every time I would put on a watch, it actually started with social media. And every time I would put on a watch, a client would go, "Oh, Roman, I saw you wearing this watch. I want that watch." Well, it's my personal watch. Well, come on, you can get yourself another one and I'll take yours. Happened once, happened twice, happened 4 times over. And it happened on some watches that went from me buying a watch for $17,000 for my personal collection all the way out to $80,000. Yeah. It happened with a 5402, the original Royal Oak from 1972. I had an A serial, loan number, beautiful watch, condition, top notch. I paid $17,000 for it. That watch went up to $120,000 now. And at this point, I was like, I can't replace that. Like, it's just like, it doesn't sit well. And I finally realized, in fact, 2 months ago, I bought a Grubel Forze Balancier with a gray, limited edition. They made like 30 of them. I'm like, I'm keeping this and I don't give a shit what anybody says.
And what happened?
It lasted 30 days until, listen, a client walks up to you that's spent $10 million with you in the past and says, I want that watch. I don't give a shit.
That Grubel Forze, what's that worth? It was like half
it was $185,000.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, nope, I want that watch. I'm like, I'll get you another one. He's like, no, I want yours. There you go.
What's currently the most?
My personal collection is my wife's watches.
I got it. What's currently, would you say, is your most coveted piece that you currently have in your inventory?
The most coveted pieces in my inventory
that you wear from time to time.
The one I'm wearing, I've been lately on the kick of wearing a Purnell. It's a new upcomer, uber complicated watch. It's a double 3D tourbillon. It's a piece unique. It's one of a kind.
This I haven't heard of. What's the name of the brand?
Purnell. Purnell.
They're fairly new?
Well, they've been around for quite some time. In fact, I remember them going back as far as about 15 years or maybe a little less while I was buying their closeouts. They started by buying the name rights. They manufacture movements in Asia. And then I bought them pennies on a dollar. Then they finally revamped the whole thing, new owner. And Cecile Purnell became mechanical, Swiss-made. Then money issues, they became C. Purnell. Then finally they're just Purnell with the right investors behind them, with the right marketing behind them. Myself included, because
you're an investor in the brand.
I'm not.
Okay.
It's a conflict of interest. But I am vested time-wise and I am vested social media-wise because I like the brand. I only do stuff, sounds fucking stupid and silly, but if I don't like something, I'm not into it.
In terms of
even if it's going to make me money.
Got it. What would you say is your favorite watch in the history of all watches?
So my favorite brand is Audemars Piguet.
Okay.
My favorite watch from Audemars Piguet on a complicated end, it would be the Alacrite Concept, which is a watch that I cannot wear. It's too big for me, but it's my favorite.
Was that a
watch.
44?
So it's the first Royal Oak Concept. It's actually it wears like a 48.
Wow.
So the concept line does wear pretty big, but the innovation that's behind it, Renault Papy movement, which AP now owns, the introduction of the lever, the tourbillon, the introduction of the material that makes spaceships out of that material. Like, it's just everything about it to me is Audemars Piguet. Complication, which is their history, that's where they started. It's the innovative use of materials, being pioneers in the space across so many different things that we see today across every brand that's now mimicking it. The man that was behind the brand, who's now just stepped down as the CEO, Francois, that's it. AP is my brand.
Do you, and this might be a controversial question in the watch industry, but do you feel sometimes that AP might be going down the route of Hublot with all these colorful special editions?
Absolutely not, because Audemars Piguet is the pioneer, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
First of all, they're a powerhouse when it comes to watchmaking. It's not a whole lot of companies that can make as complicated watches as Audemars Piguet, number one. They're still a privately owned company. Their history started with them making complicated movements for Tiffany pocket watches. They didn't start making, I'm going to make a watch that tells time. So Audemars Piguet, they originated the shit. It's everybody else that's following.
Okay. Is there a grail that you're chasing and you can't get?
I don't chase anything.
Yeah.
I can get anything, believe it or not. There's not a watch in the world that I cannot get unless it was a piece unique specifically made for somebody who's not selling. But for the most part, I can get anything I want. Is there something that's going to be like, hey, I made it? I think the flex now becomes monetary. And to me, it was always the Sky Moon Tourbillon, the holy grail of all watches, the most complicated that they make. And
That double face one?
It's a double face one. Yeah, it's the most complicated watch they make today. Market price, older version $2.5 million, newer version $4 to $5 million. It's when I'm able to consciously say, hey, fuck it, I'm going to take a $5 million watch and I'm personally going to keep it for myself. And what tells me that I made it is not the fact that I spent $5 million on a watch, because if I buy that watch, that means I've already put all my kids through college. I have enough of a savings plan to last me and my generations a lifetime, and I'm able to travel the world and love what I do with my wife for the rest of my life. That's how I know I made it. It is somewhat monetary, but it's not at the same time.
Okay. Okay. In terms of any advice that you have for a young watch collector, not even somebody in the business, but somebody who's, just bought their first, they got their first steel sports model, or, and they're young, they're in their 20s, they just started their job.
It's a slippery fucking slope. Don't overdo it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell the listeners what I've been telling everybody and every collector I've ever went across. The same thing for the last 20 years. You buy what you like first and foremost within the means that you can afford. It's very simple.
Gotcha. Roman, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it.
This is a lot of fun. We should definitely do this again. Before I leave, I am plugging the owner of the store that we're currently in. I'm wearing this because I don't need to plug my website or my YouTube channel, but I am going to plug my son, hypemiami.com, where he was gracious enough to allow us to film this in his store. He's starving back there right now, and he's ready to go to dinner. So if you guys get a chance, definitely check out his YouTube channel and definitely check out his website if you like this type of stuff.